At one point, I heard them talk about my blood pressure, and one of the nurses said his blood pressure is 52 on 36. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm in real trouble here. I'm dying. This is dying. I'm dying right now. And it was a full body sadness. It was just like, oh, I'm dying and no one I love is here. And I look in the corner and I can see the physio and he's just pale and he just looks so scared. And I think, you poor guy, you think you've killed me. And then I blacked out. My name's Ash Perro. In 2016, I was getting ready to have a back operation, and life up until that point had been very challenging. I'd had PTSD and depression and severe adrenal fatigue. I'd been in and out of mental health clinics and working on my health for about 7 years, and life had been very hard. There was lots of reasons life should have been easy, and there was lots of blessings in my life with family, and I was just able to work, and waking up every morning was hard. And I'd had a injury surfing, and I had popped a few discs in my back, and what that meant was that the discs were pressing on the nerves in my back. So some days I needed help to tie up my shoes so I could go to work. I would be taking opioids to get through the workday. And I'd made a decision that after trying lots of natural therapies like acupuncture and lots of other different therapies, that I needed to go have a back operation, which I'd been putting off. And so in November 2016, I went into hospital and they did spinal fusion, which went well, according to the surgeons. And during the night, when I was back on the ward, I had a lot of pain. And I kept pressing the button for the nurses, and the nurses would come and they would say to me, it's okay, just press the fentanyl button. When you have some more fentanyl, it'll be ready soon. And so I got through the night. It was very disruptive. And the next morning, a young physio came in and he said, I'm going to get you up for rehab. And I said, okay. And I turned and sat on the edge of the bed, and I remember looking down my thigh and I thought, my leg's not normally like this. And I said to him, my leg is much bigger than it normally is. And he said, oh, you'll be okay, just hop up. And so I stood up and immediately felt dizzy. I fell back on the bed. And I think I must have blacked out for just a little bit, because when I opened my eyes, he was pressing the red emergency button and the siren went off and all the medical team ran in. And I was laying on the bed and I was aware of what was happening. It was as if I went into a state of hyper consciousness, hyper awareness, and I knew exactly what they were saying. I knew where everybody was in the room and what they were doing. And I was thinking, oh, I'll be okay. Even though there's all this stuff happening, I thought, I'll be okay. They put the oxygen mask on me, and the team were trying to put on the electrodes onto my chest, but they wouldn't stick because my body was bathed in cold sweat. It had just broken out and my body was just drenched in sweat. And they were saying, stay with us, Ash, keep your eyes open, which was interesting to me because I wasn't worried. I could see what was happening, but I wasn't worried. And they were talking about my pulse, and they said he doesn't have a pulse, he's not breathing, and I still wasn't worried. And I could see that every time they said something, there was somebody over in the corner, a man, and he was writing down exactly everything that they said. And It was very surreal. It was happening to me, but I wasn't distressed, and I didn't have any pain, and I could just see what was happening. And it didn't, for me, it wasn't that I was above everybody. I was still here looking from this perspective forward. And at one point, I heard them talk about my blood pressure. And one of the nurses said his blood pressure is 52 on 36. So normal blood pressure is around 120 on 80. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm in real trouble here. And even though I'd already been through all these things that were going on, I hadn't connected the dots that I was in trouble. And I thought, oh, I'm dying. This is dying. I'm dying right now. And then I had this immense sadness because nobody I loved was in the room with me. And it was a full body sadness. It was just like, oh, I'm dying and no one I love is here. And I remember looking at the faces in the room, and they're still saying, keep your eyes open, Ash. And it's getting harder and harder to keep my eyes open. And I look in the corner and I can see the physio, and he's just pale and he just looks so scared. And I think, you poor guy, you think you've killed me. And then I blacked out. And I became ripples. And I was in a black, infinite black nothingness. But I was the ripples. The ripples were me. The nothingness was me. And the ripples were just going out and out and out. And there was no limit to how far the ripples were going. So I was very present. I knew very much that I was in this process of dying. I've had a desire to stay. And the ripples just kept going. I started to say, I want to stay. I remember being very surprised that I felt like me. I'd seen NDE Journey speak at a few months before I had my own near-death experience, and I thought I'd become some sort of enlightened Buddha, some enlightened spiritual being, but now I might say I didn't realize I already was an enlightened spiritual being in this body. But the experience was I was still myself. So now I understand it, that what I did was I left the conditioning of my human experience behind and was experiencing the true essence of myself. And it was the self that I'd always known. It was this sense of self that had always been with me my whole life. And it wasn't the one that had had PTSD and depression. It was the one that was always there. And it might be difficult to describe, but my understanding now is we all have that sense of self, and it's with us wherever we go, including death. And so I'm saying I want to stay. And then I started saying all these people I wanted to stay for. I want to stay for my partner. I want to stay for the kids. And I was still going out. And it was almost like each time I said the people I wanted to stay for, I went further and further. It was like it was accelerating what was happening. And then I felt this warmth come over me, and I said, I want to stay for the work that I do and walk the planet from my heart. Which was totally different to everything else I had been saying. Everything before that was about other people. And this time it was about myself. I want to stay for the work that I do and walk the planet from my heart. And the very, very, very instant that I expressed that, straight back into my body. I opened my eyes. I could hear the medical team saying his eyes are open. We've got a pulse, he's breathing. And I was in immense pain. I had lost so much blood in my body that the blood on my organs was causing immense pain, and so I started screaming. I was grateful to be alive, but the pain was so immense. And I remember that the medical team rushed me down and put me in a scanning machine. I think maybe it was an MRI, I'm not sure. And then I ended up in ICU. And so what had happened was, during the surgery, the surgeons had torn a vein, and I'd been bleeding out for 16 hours internally. I ended up losing almost half the blood in my body was floating around in my body instead of in my blood vessels, which led to a lot of complications. It took me 8 months to get back to full-time work. My health was very poor for a long time, and because of the amount of blood, I ended up developing a severe blood clot, which impacted my ability to walk. But I remember being in the ICU, and I was thinking about the experience that I went through, and I thought I was living from my heart. I was kind and doing my best to help people in my life. And what I realized was that I'd been putting everybody else first, and I was always putting myself last. And that was why I had the back issues that I had, was because I wasn't living life my way. I was living life the way I thought I should live life. And so my insight around living from the heart, saying, oh, okay. And so I'm laying there in the ICU, and I'm just a slab of meat on a bed. I can't move. I have conscious awareness. I'm just breathing in and out for days. And I'm thinking, oh, I wasn't living from my heart. What does it mean to live from my heart? I had this so wrong. And at one point, I was in a lot of pain. I remember just saying to the nurse, I'm so grateful to know this level of suffering. People go through this every day. And I remember thinking at the time, why am I saying that? That's not something I would normally say. But I felt it. I just felt gratitude for being in such pain and such a connection to other people who were going through that. And that was the moment that I realized something had shifted in me from the experience. I was like, oh, something's changed. I was in hospital for a few weeks, and 2 weeks after I got out of hospital, the relationship I was in, we split up. I say now, an experience like that will either bring your relationship close together or it will break it. And our relationship, we'd been together for 5 years, and we'd been trying hard to make it work. And the first couple of years were really beautiful, but we'd had 3 years of things being very difficult between us. And the NDE accelerated that breakup. It was a catalyst that led to the breakup. And so for me, my life started again from almost zero. As in, I had very poor health. I had very few possessions. My daughter and I moved out, and she had her bedroom furniture and her toys and all those kinds of things. And I had my music gear and not much else. So life started from zero. The universe said, okay, you want to live from your heart? Well, let's hit reset. And that's not something I would have consciously chosen. It felt like that was just part of coming back. It was that life had to be this way. And so I started going, okay, well, how do I live from my heart? And I started doing personal work and learning to get healthier again. And even that was learning to prioritize myself so I could heal. And then over the next few years, I started doing personal work, and people started coming to me and saying, well, why are you so happy even though you've gone through all this? And what emerged was that question. So the first part of my insight, I want to walk the planet from my heart, that's what I focused on and getting healthy. And through me living from my heart and living in a way that made me happy, I discovered that that was helping other people be happy. And people started coming to me and saying, well, how do you do this? And I didn't want to give answers, so I went and trained as a coach and learned about asking questions so they could come up with their own answers. And so that became the work of my heart. And so here we are almost 10 years later that I was previously a school teacher. I left school teaching, I became a coach, and I've always been a musician. And so that's what I do now. I help heart-led leaders to get their message out into the world and share their work and stay in the process of leading from the heart, because it can be very difficult to lead from the heart. But I had someone ask me a question one day, which was, well, what's harder, living from the heart or not living from the heart? And as challenging as it can be to follow my heart and not my mind, life is so much better. And so here we are almost 10 years forward. I've been in a new relationship for coming up to 9 years, and we've been married for 6 years, and it's just been beautiful, really, really beautiful to come into a relationship with my heart and prioritizing myself as well as the relationship, whereas before I was always putting myself last. And so I actually wasn't in the relationship. It was no surprise that I went through so much disconnection through PTSD and depression and health issues, because I wasn't including me in my life. So now my life is built up around my heart and what my heart calls me to do in the world. And it's been a beautiful gift to experience that. And so if you're watching this video, I would say trust yourself, trust your heart. Whatever the next step is for you, just take it. And over time, those steps compound, more and more steps from you trusting yourself and your inner knowing and your inner guidance. That's life-changing. That one step takes you somewhere different. 5 steps takes you somewhere very different. 100 steps, 1,000 steps. You're in a totally different experience of life, and that's a life that you have created. So that's my message for you. It's all there waiting for you, just to trust yourself and trust your inner knowing and take those steps from your heart. And the mind is a tool for helping you get there. It shouldn't be in charge. And that the heart calls you forward and the mind is the tool. So if you find your mind is trying to manipulate you into ways that you should live, which is what I used to do, then it might be a good experiment to see what happens when you follow your heart.